When we had been dating for I think probably about 6 months, he told me that he struggled with pornography. And it was honestly, it's one of those upside down moments too, because didn't hear about it in my home, didn't know anyone who struggled with it. So it felt like on some level, the worst of the worst of the worst. And he felt so it was just, it shattered my reality, honestly. And we didn't talk for probably a day or two afterwards, because I was it just felt so.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Let's Talk About It podcast by Moral Revolution. My name is Ellis Madry, and today we are switching it up a little bit. We have a good friend of ours here in the studio. Her name is Jenna Zint. She has been on the podcast before, but she was here with her husband, Aaron Zint, years ago, before Daniel and I were here. You were here with Cole and Kate, and you and Aaron came on and shared your story just about his struggle with pornography, how you guys walked through that in your marriage. And then even since then, we have had Aaron come back on because he's so brilliant at talking to people and walking them through getting free from a porn addiction. And this week I was like, we have to have Jenna on. We need an episode with just Jenna.
You know what's funny? If you go even further back, I was on Super Pregnant, when they did a summer series. Yeah. Okay. So I'm huge. I can't get up to the table because my belly's in the way.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll have to scroll through the MR archives.
No need to.
I'm sure it's still on the internet. I'm sure it's out there.
I get it sent to me every now and again. I'm like, yep, that was a decade ago.
Yeah. But the goal of this conversation today, more than anything else, is to help the person who has just found out that they are in a relationship with someone who is struggling with pornography. And it is an all too common experience. And it's honestly a very isolating experience of first of all, what? What am I doing here? And second of all, how do I actually walk through this? How much of this is your problem? But this now feels like it's partly my problem too. And so I just thought there's no one better to have on and join us for this conversation than you. So thank you for being here.
Thanks. Yeah. I feel really strongly about having this conversation because I don't think it's had often enough,
Sure.
Especially in the church. It's not a widely talked about, okay, here's what it feels like and here are some steps. So.
Yeah, I love it. I'm glad you're here. I'd love for you to just walk us through. If you could take us back to the beginning of your story and just kind of share, how did this, I'm sure this is never the conversation 20 years ago that you thought, oh, I'm going to be having that conversation,
Totally.
But how did this kind of unfold for you guys? And specifically, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I was born in the I kissed dating goodbye era. Nice. So Aaron is my first kiss, my first boyfriend. So when we had been dating for I think probably about 6 months, he told me that he struggled with pornography. And it was honestly, it's one of those upside down moments too, because didn't hear about it in my home, didn't know anyone who struggled with it. So it felt on some level, the worst of the worst of the worst. And he felt so it was just, it shattered my reality, honestly. And we didn't talk for probably a day or two afterwards because I was it just felt so, what I thought was up is down. And now it was just so disoriented. So then we walked through him going after getting more whole and kind of breaking his addiction, him doing the healing work versus just kind of white knuckling, stop it, behavior management versus actually healing that leads to freedom. And it's interesting because I think with these kind of things, you want it to be a one and done. Mm-hmm. But often, if you think about how, in the brain, it's an addiction and what happens with other people's addictions, with drug addictions. And as they walk out freedom, often it's a bumpy road to freedom.
Sure.
So that was our experience. It probably, I don't fully know the timeline, but it was probably a decade of him going after it before he found total sobriety for quite a few years now. He joined a group that was super helpful, but even when we were married, so maybe the pattern, I think usually what happens, is that there's a longer and longer period between maybe a relapse, just literally plain addiction talk. Mm-hmm. So that was the signs of him getting better. But when a relapse would happen, it would still be unnerving because you want it to be the last time being the last time. And it's this weird tension of specifically in a faith culture having hope. So where do you put in hope with also realistic expectations of recovery for an addiction, Totally. So every time I remember when he decided he was going to go join this group, I actually felt pretty embarrassed. I feel kind of chagrined to admit it, but I tried to talk him out of going and he was like, why wouldn't you want me to go to this group? And I was like, well, everybody will know we have this problem. And it was just, I had to plainly say it. And I was like, I don't love that, but that is honestly there. And there is a bit of, no one else is talking about this, even though we're so honest in a bunch of my friendships. I don't want to be the only one with like mud on our face, kind of.
Sure.
And then he was so great. He was like, I actually care enough to go get healing. Like, can you see that? Like, can we get over that? And I'm like, yes, yeah. So I processed through it. He gave me a moment. But then what I was going to say is when he would like have like a relapse or a slip up, whatever degree it was in, having to talk to someone about it. I remember like the first time I was like, I can't just metabolize this on my own anymore. Like, I actually need to bring a friend into it. And it was so uncomfortable because no one's talking about it. So you're like, are they going to be outraged? Am I going to have to, because you're going for process and comfort and care for you. But in the shock of it, like, am I going to have to like handle their surprise, or their judgment or whatever could come. So actually having to decide like it's worth it. So I picked a friend. We chatted about it. She, was pretty stone-faced, but kind. And then so afterwards I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't deal with it. She probably thinks it's crazy that we do, but she was kind. So then fast forward like a month later, she calls me and she's like, hey, remember how you talked to me about your husband's problem? Well, my husband has one too. Can we talk? And it was this like eye-opening experience of like, and then it just started happening as I had a couple friends that I processed, like they would share eventually in the safety of like their husband's struggles as well. So not that it's like everyone out there, but the idea that you're alone and that protecting your husband is not talking about it, or protecting them is not talking about it, really isolated me in a way that like, I think my husband actually led the way for me to not be ashamed or to stay isolated in his recovery journey. So yeah, that has been it. And then now we have, because my husband has, he works in the porn recovery industry. So he has a book and he has a course and he does coaching in this. We do a lot of couples coaching after a spouse confesses to the wife and we're there. It almost feels like ground zero cleanup. And it kind of feels like reliving my story over and over again, but I have so much compassion because it's so disorienting when it happens. And like, where do you go from here? Like, can you recover? Like all those feelings, I'm like, it just breaks my heart. So I'm glad we're having it on a wider scale conversation because it's so disorienting.
Totally. It's interesting because, you talk about, from your perspective, the shame of, I don't want to bring this to someone else. No one else is talking about this. I feel like the perspective from men a lot of times is, I think we're all kind of talking about this.
Yes.
Like I think men do talk about it.
It's actually kind of
amongst
shocking,
themselves.
the difference.
Right. But it really isn't something that women spend a ton of time talking about, which I will say, just as a disclaimer, we're having this discussion almost from the context of a female finds out that her male partner is having this problem. But this happens in reverse too.
100%.
So this can apply both ways.
Totally.
But for the sake of this conversation and even y'all's
just
experience.
My perspective.
Sure,
yeah.
Exactly. We're going to approach it from that way. I would love for you to tell me, what does, he obviously told you about it, that he was struggling when you guys were still dating, and then it continued into marriage. What were the emotions that came up in you when he first brought it to you when you're dating versus the emotions that come up? Does that change when you get married? And like, because surely there's this one thought in there that like, we're going to get married and it's going to fix this and it's going to go away and he's not going to struggle anymore.
So true. This one thought / 50% of my thoughts. So it was like, and then I'll fix it when we can have sex, because just a drive management situation.
Totally.
When I first found out, I honestly felt so shocked. Like, I know now someone, not only do I know someone, I know a good man who struggles with this, because like there's not meant to be a category or hierarchy of sin. I think I had, like in my youth group days, had decided that was the worst of the worst, specifically because no one's talking about it in my world. So then to be like, how can you be good and integrous and then also struggle with that? That was like, it kind of blew some of my paradigms.
It was a cognitive dissonance. It's hard to reconcile in your brain.
Because I'm like, people who don't have good work ethics or someone else who's like struggling with character are the kind of people that struggle with like, actually, that's not true. So that was hard for me. And then the betrayal, because it can feel personal. Like this subtle identity attack of what's wrong with me? Am I not enough? Like, and it totally now it feels like, wouldn't that be like the enemy to have it be their problem that then becomes like, a moment of self-deprecation for yourself. And you're like, oh. So that was, I felt really insecure because you're also like, dating's not set. Like there's no covenant. You're like, oh, what does this mean about me? It feels a little bit more tentative, you know? And then when we got married, it was more maybe heartbreaking because it felt like the level of commitment was obviously increased, yet it didn't make this problem go away automatically. And then also probably gave me more realistic expectations of what recovery was going to look like versus kind of a trajectory up of like, oh, okay, this is me saying yes to the highs and the lows as we continue towards healing.
Sure. The dichotomy that you went into of like, there's the feelings of betrayal that you have of like, okay, no, I feel an actual sense of betrayal here. But then there's my own feelings of insecurity around this. How do you separate the two of those and move forward? Like, what does that look like?
I would say the interesting part, one thing that I felt lucky about Erin was very clear about not making it like, this isn't your fault, this is a me thing. Sadly, not all men are that clear, like different levels of health. So we've definitely sat in on things where maybe the spouse who slipped up is prescribing, if you would do this, I wouldn't have this problem. Like actually trying to slide some of the blame on to the other person, where I think like you should just be so clear. Like maybe there are other issues. Maybe you get to you have some communication issues. Maybe there's something else, but them not managing themselves and their own behavior is
and
a
taking
them thing.
Personal responsibility.
Yes, it is a them thing. It does not mean I'm not worthy. It does not mean I'm attractive. I actually feel heartbroken when some of the women go down the path of like, I must not be worth loving. I'm like not attractive enough. It's like turns on them like, oh, this is not a you thing. This is a them managing them thing. So I'd say that'd be my biggest thing if I could get anyone. And then like take that to the Lord. I don't actually think it's helpful to ask the person who slipped up, like, am I worthy? Like they're probably not in the right mental state. Like go, you and the Lord sit with like, am I lovable? Am I valuable? Am I worthy? Am I worth like someone managing themselves for my own heart protection? And be resolute there so that you can address what needs to be addressed with with your significant other.
Sure. With those initial emotions that you feel in that moment of confession or whatever else, how do you not sit in that? Like, how do you not ruminate or stay there? Because I feel like it makes total sense to feel the feelings, to fully grieve it. I mean, and even you and I were talking about this before we even pressed record. You're like, it's a grieving process.
Yeah, it's so, well, that's actually probably one thing I didn't expect. I thought after a confession, I'd feel the fullness of it and it would dissipate. But kind of like grief, if you've ever like lost someone, there's like waves of it. And there's actually like, what is it, 7 stages or 8 stages of grief or something like that. It's very similar after like if someone confesses, like you have the initial like shock and then maybe there's anger and then there's betrayal, maybe there's heartbreak. But I would say embarrassment is one that I didn't expect, but pops up pretty chronically for people. Like after you work through it's like usually a few weeks later. Like I thought one of the things that I hear all the time from significant others is, I thought we were so connected. Now I feel foolish that this was happening while I thought we were so like that we had such this honest, thriving connection. And I would say that would be my feedback of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like their inability to manage themselves does not mean the connection you did have is inauthentic or irreal. Like you can actually process like that feels embarrassing to think we're this way. Cause that's actually, I would say, more hitting to the lack of honesty than we don't have a connection. And I think sometimes it gets muddled where it's like, oh, actually, I need you to tell me more quickly and honest because I feel embarrassed finding out like we are living 2 different experiences.
Right.
That's different than we don't have a connection, like after the fact.
So how do you keep yourself from like, where's the line between going through an actual grief process and then getting stuck in these feelings of insecurity or embarrassment or whatever else, like fill in the blank? How do you not ruminate?
Well, it's so real. I would say that like, I think it should look different. You should notice different things popping up versus the same. I think like rumination is usually pretty looping thoughts and it sounds the same versus like, if you think about like the stages of grief, there is a change. If there's no change, then that tends to be rumination. And then I think if you continue to be like, almost like if bitterness or offense is happening, then that is usually probably evidence. I call it my pain spoiled. So it's like I didn't actually process it or like metabolize it in a way that I'm moving through it. It's like the Tupperware that's in the back of your fridge.
Wow.
It's there, but it's like moldy and spoiled. So I think sometimes we confuse it still hurts with rumination, where I'm like, oh yeah, there will be a process to rebuild. But if you're looping on very similar thoughts And if you're even like cementing thoughts like I can never trust them again, like you are making oaths with your words that will actually hurt you. I think we untangle like they do need to do behaviors to rebuild trust, but when you're looping on I can never trust them again or anything or generic things about men, like you're actually hurting yourself and making these absolutes from a pain. Like an incident does not need to define the full picture, like remembering that. So I would ask that and then actually have process like, Lord, how do I move through this? Like I'm stuck here. One, I just automatically weed absolutes out of my pain because I'm like, ooh, I don't actually want to make oaths out of my pain.
What would that sound like?
Like I'll never be able to trust him again. I'll always be doubting your faithfulness. I'll always wonder if while we're connecting, if you're thinking of someone else, like those absolutes, I'm like, you're actually kind of like creating doorways to agree with things that you don't want to. Like I actually want to have my mind be in a sound spot regardless of your behavior. So I think just being aware of not using absolutes because you're kind of making oaths that are going to be self-sabotaging more than helpful to actually create new patterns.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but it's so normal to receive information like this, like find out that your partner is looking at porn and take that information so personally.
Yeah.
How do you keep from taking it personally?
Honestly, a lot of times a porn problem is rooted in the person having an unmet emotional need that they sexualize.
Yeah.
So the idea of if he doesn't know when he's lonely, if he doesn't know when he's on burnout, if he doesn't know, like that is a him getting his needs met in helpful ways that it's almost like someone who drives their car with the check engine light and then their engine explodes because they didn't put oil. And like, if you had just stopped and checked,
right,
it's not my fault.
But you got so used to getting in your car and seeing that check engine light and you just ignored it
until there's but then they'd be like blaming the person who sold you the car or someone who's riding with you. Like, you're like, actually it's up to you to manage. Like I can't be in your body. So like untangling it from what I'm worth or my attractiveness or I contributed to this behavior. But I do think like, again, there could be a lot of times there are relational issues that are real, but I kind of think about like separating out, like almost if you have your necklaces tangled up, in a hot mess, you can't actually wear them together. So actually laying out, this is his part of management. Yes, we get to figure out communication, but I will not draw the conclusion that me being a bad communicator led to him is like is why he chose to look at porn. Him choosing porn is his own thing. It is not the effect or fault of, or even when you're married, how often we're having sex. Because then I watch women getting these patterns of like, well, I know he needs it once a week to like keep him pure. And I'm like, no, he gets to manage his own purity. And
we're all powerful people here.
Yes.
We all get to take responsibility for ourselves
100%.
and bring ourselves powerfully to the table with another person.
1,000%. Yeah. So making sure you do like, hey, I feel really like my emotions are over here and you can have your emotions, but saying I'm to blame for your choices is not okay.
How do you tell the difference between a mistake or a slip up and a pattern of like, oh, we actually have an issue here?
Yeah. Well, I would say the frequency of a cycle. So like kind of like a drug. It was actually helpful for me when you were talking about untangling it from my identity or worth, thinking about it like an addiction, like a drug addict, because it's like, oh, they have a hard time managing themselves too. And the person, their spouse doesn't think it's their fault if they're,
Right.
So I'm like, it helped me actually using different analogies to compare in the addiction. But I would say, how are they working on it? So are they, when there's a slip up, how contrite are they? Do they actually feel some ownership? Are they trying different things? I would, most of the time, if someone has chronic repeat, they need to be in counseling, they need to be in therapy, they need to be in coaching, because there are internal like emotional needs that they're blowing past and they're so out of touch with that there's like no ability to management. I would say that as the cycles grow further apart.
So would you say like a once a week cycle versus this happens once a month versus this happens every 6 months or a year? Like,
yes, totally.
So could you quantify it and say, if this is happening once a week, you need to be in counseling, or if this is happening once a month, you need to be in counseling versus like, how do you
that's
determine
great. I really don't like putting numbers to things.
Okay.
But I would say though, I would want them to be as disappointed that they haven't gotten to the root and as committed to figuring out a different solution if what they've been trying is we're like giving them results that aren't working. So I don't want to be more like, hey, you need to get in coach. Like, hey, that to me feels more like the flag of they're like, I'm going to manage this on my own and there's no improvement. I'm like, oh, then you have a problem because you're actually for some reason unwilling to get help. Right. And your ownership level or the awareness of this is an issue, because sometimes people just become immune to their own cycles and you're like, I'm not actually okay. Like maybe you don't think it's a problem. Any of it is a problem, because maybe there's a 6-month cycle and that's not okay. Or maybe there's a weekly and that's not okay. What level of like tenacity and even contrite heart are they going after it when they have the slip up? And then are they trying something else?
Like, are you actually broken over your sin, or are you just like, well, this is kind of what happens?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would be concerned
yes.
if that's the mentality.
1,000%.
Yeah.
That would probably fall, in my opinion, abuse of grace versus like, okay, there should be transformation.
Sure.
And even too, like people who, I mean, outside of porn, I think we're kind of in a culture that consumes information without implementation and transformation. So that would be like, oh, or maybe he's learning it or figuring all these things, but if he's not actually doing the hard work of getting the reps in of trying something else, then I'm like, you're actually not working as hard on this to make me feel like you understand that this isn't okay.
This statistic honestly blows my mind a little. 89.5% of the people who watch or listen to this podcast regularly aren't yet subscribers to the show. So before we dive in, could I ask you one thing? If this podcast has ever helped you, if you care about honest, unfiltered conversations around God's design for sex, dating, and relationships, would you hit subscribe? It's free and it helps us more than you know. And our promise to you is this: we'll do everything in our power to make this show the best it can be. We'll take your feedback, we'll keep answering your toughest questions, and there's no conversation around God's design for sex and relationships that we'll shy away from. Thank you. When you find out that your partner has a porn addiction, what is helpful in terms of how you respond? What's a helpful way of asking questions or talking about it? And what would be like sneaking into a cycle of control or shame? Because I can just imagine from a perspective of, well, now I'm going to be your police. Now I'm going to take it upon myself to make sure you never watch porn again, you know, and that's not your role.
So the difference for me is I'm like, I need you to have a man in that role. I mean, like 90s would say accountability partners, but what I need them to know, like I need them to be more further along in this journey than you. I need them to be someone that you actually care about their opinion. If they're calling Bob, I don't know his name, Bob. If they're calling like Luke from down the street that is in the same cycle that you are,
totally,
that's actually not going to be helpful. And a confession or accountability is going to be pretty weak versus like calling your mentor.
You need to be accountable to someone who's free.
Yeah. Free, and someone who you respect their opinion. Like you don't want to have to, or you know that it matters. Versus
like you have a healthy reverence of like letting the person, like I'm a little bit nervous to let you know that this happened.
Yeah. Because I care about your opinion.
Yeah.
And I respect your life probably too.
Yeah,
versus
totally.
Like, you're not going to punish me. But so I'd say that is it. Then for me, what I always say is helpful and then kind of give wives the advice is I think time frame is super important.
Yeah.
Because we talked about that like embarrassment of like, I thought we were okay, but you have been hiding this for 2 weeks and that's retroactive. So for me, that's like a no-go. I'm like, I want to know within 24 hours because also it builds trust with honesty. I think almost men miss that there's two things happening. It's the porn and it's the dishonesty.
Yeah.
So treating them almost like separate issues. So I'm like, to rebuild trust with your honesty, this is the time frame I need to know in. And then the next part would be, what do I want to know? So what I think is not helpful.
That is my next question.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's not helpful to be like, oh, did you look at brunettes or was it like full nudity? Like getting that detailed usually kind of ends up, I watch women, it's almost like, it's so sad. It feels like it infects them into like, I'm not skinny enough or he likes that. And this is, and it becomes this comparison thing.
Yeah.
So for the sake of you, that much details are usually not helpful. Okay. But I would say something like, I would like, hey, if we call it going on the hunt. So if you were caught yourself wanting to find something, but you didn't, like, just give me a heads up. I'm not going to ask, what'd you Google? I'm not going to ask, like, I don't need to know that. And I wouldn't say that, like, this is an absolute, but I do find when people get too many details, it's usually damning to the woman more than it is helpful for the husband to break the cycle.
I have seen it go so south where it's like, I don't know if it's just like, there's this honesty policy that people think they have to have. And so they'll feel like they have to know every detail of what their partner watched. And it's like, I just don't know that that's helpful.
No. I think it also takes you, when you're the sobriety coach-ish, it takes you out of your heart. It gets you kind of into a logistics spot where I'm like, I actually just want to be the woman who's brokenhearted right now. I don't want to ask you how you got there. I just want to be like, this hurts so bad. And I feel so sad. And honestly, most of the time when he would tell me, it'd be really small. I know my personality is different than most, but I tend to shove my emotions and I'm not as emotional as a person. So I would kind of, if I couldn't feel the fullness of it in real time in that moment, I would think that was it, versus now I kind of have I had to get a habit of, I'll feel sad, but I don't actually need to find all the words right now to explain to him.
Sure.
I usually would say like something like that, really short and sad. And maybe we'd sit in awkward silence, honestly, or maybe I'd like cry a bit. I think there's a tendency to want to protect them from your pain if you're more on that side, because you see if they're like really remorseful. But I'm like, oh, actually, it's not my job to protect you from my pain. I'm also going to manage myself to not punish you, because I don't actually want to punish anyone outside of the porn conversation. Like, punishing with my heart behavior is not what is my job, but I'm not going to rescue you from feeling the effects or almost like the fruit of your choices. Yeah. So like I would kind of do that where I'm like, oh, I don't want to add to his sadness, or he already feels so bad. I hear that all the time. So I know I'm not alone in thinking that, but I'm like, totally. But also this is a consequence of the choice, like relationally that he made. It is okay that he feels it.
How do you communicate how those actions make you feel without moving into a place of punishment?
Yeah.
What does that sound like?
I think, again, for me, usually I express the remorsefulness. I feel it, sit in it. Maybe it's 10 minutes of silence. Maybe it's 5. And then I say like, hey, I'm going to process this. And I'll think I'll be ready to talk about it tomorrow or something like that. So it's almost like, that was more scary growing up with your parents. So I'm not trying to evoke fear, but I know that I won't be able to actually engage with all this meant to my heart, or ask him the questions, or tell him what it's happening inside of me instantly. Sure. So I expect that way he doesn't code it as, I thought that was finished. I thought it was a one and done. I would say probably that's the biggest advice.
I thought I was coming in for one conversation. Yes. We were going to have the conversation. I was going to get it over with and it was not going to be a big deal. And you're like, nope, we're revisiting tomorrow.
Totally. And then like, you're punishing me. You're like, no, actually this is the waves of grief from your choices. So, but giving them a heads up. And then if it were to come, I actually have like a kind of almost like a bullet journaling for processing, so that I can get words to like what happened in my heart. Or like, it's hard to believe, maybe it'd be like, I feel hurt because it's hard to believe that I was in the house when it happened. Like, what was that threshold of why didn't you come to me? Or I feel lonely because this keeps popping, whatever it looks like. I actually just go through and get nuanced of maybe even things that I know aren't true but are in my heart, and then I present him to him like that.
So you're not just writing these things down, you are then bringing these things to the table for the sake of conversation.
Yeah. And he knows, and what we've had to say is like, hey, I'm actually not looking for like a courtroom case where you explain why or justify, or even try to give me, sometimes maybe it's not even defensiveness, like they realize it's something they don't want to do, but maybe it's like, oh no, it wasn't a 10-minute, been in so many sessions where the husband's like, it wasn't 15 minutes or it wasn't full nudity, it was 5. And I'm like, oh, dude, you're missing the point. Like, this is actually not the point. So it's like when you get stuck in courtroom mode, you're not connecting with the heart, and the goal is to just connect with the heart. So just explaining everything that's in your heart and asking like, hey, I get it. I actually just need to be known. Can you please wait to respond to like, or even starting like, I just need you to know the broken, like what I'm like putting words to my broken heart right now, or whatever that looks like. And then 2, if it pops back up later, like again, expecting waves, I'll give him a heads up like, hey, I'm realizing something else came up. I'm going to need to talk about it, because there's this expectation of like, I'm not shooting from the cuff, because then I see it weaponized. Well, it's like, I'm not coming home, or I went on a shopping trip, or, like whatever it looks like. Sure. You don't get to say anything because you looked at porn. And I'm like, oh, that's not a marriage or a relationship where we're comparing debts as well. I'm like, don't do that either. That's unhelpful. But this expectation of like, hey, it's more to come. I'm not punishing you, but also I've discovered more, and this is the ramifications of that decision, even if it was 3 weeks ago.
Let me ask you this, because, I feel like a lot of our conversation has been around, okay, this is what happens if this is coming up in the context of marriage. But what would you say? Because what would you say to the people who aren't married yet? Maybe they're just dating or they're engaged. And so it's like, okay, I am just now finding out that the person that I'm in a relationship with is struggling with pornography. Should we break up?
That's such a good question. I would say that I think most of what I was saying is applicable to dating. Like, just if you're listening, like you get to have all the feels and multiple conversations too. I do. Like, one of the things, before I answer that question fully, not enough mistakes. We actually do a lot of work with pre-marriage and then like into marriage. But one of the most mistakes that I would say I watch couples make is they say, we had the porn conversation, but then they're on our couch 2 years later and the wife's like, I'm so surprised. And I'm like, oh, okay. What was the conversation you had?
What was that porn conversation?
Yeah. So most of the time it is like past or like, do you have a problem? And then it's very vague. It's almost like they touch it, but then like run away. They're like,
sure.
So like, I knew he struggled, but he was doing better. And I want to say that most of the time in dating, there's a bit of an ease with sobriety. So what it doesn't mean is it's hopeless or that it's doomed to have a slip up, but there is a bit of a honeymoon phase that I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Sure. But is he actually putting in the work with other things like knowing his heart, talking to men, not being isolated, getting in connection with some of his needs? Like that to me is going to show the longevity of this sobriety versus it's just not happening because all my needs are getting met with this new relationship.
Especially because you even said at the beginning, a lot of times a porn problem is a bad management of emotional needs. Yeah. And so it's like I had this overwhelm or burnout or whatever emotional need pop up, and then I just needed to escape that pain. And so I turned to pornography. And the reality is in the beginning of a relationship, a lot of times, I mean, you are like
on cloud nine.
You're on cloud 9 100%. And things are great. And all these things. And so it's like, there's nothing that you want to escape from. Yeah. And so it's
we want to bottle up that feeling and get
exactly. Yeah. It's when you've settled in a little bit more and you're getting into those real rhythms of life and you start to get a little bit more comfortable
or you go through some hard, like 6 months in, like probably once a year, something real hard happens. Sure. It's like, what do you do in those moments? But what I was going to say is for the question to have is actually ask about their cycle. So like, okay, when was the last time you looked at porn? How long have you struggled with porn? What are you currently doing to get your needs met elsewhere? What have you identified as your root cause? What are some of your steps that lead up? Like how aware are they of what contributes to it versus this just happens periodically? Yeah. The more blind someone is and the less information, the more red flags that would be to me, where I'm like, they're just like, stop it, quit it, versus actually getting curious about the roots and doing that work.
So you don't necessarily think that finding out someone is struggling with pornography is an immediate cause for breakup, but it's more about how well do they know themselves and their own triggers and what are the contributing factors, or how contrite is their heart when they mess up and stuff like that?
Yeah. And then do I see them putting the work in too, to actually go after healing? Because frankly, like, do I wish my husband had a porn problem? No, but he is wholer and more in touch with the Lord, his heart, and friends in like covenant community because this problem he was trying to fix, it made him go on a journey to realize he had all these needs he didn't know about. So I do not wish that was what started his journey, but I'm so grateful for the man that's come out the other side.
Sure.
I would say though, the beautiful part about finding this out before you get married is I would want a good span of upward momentum. Like I would want to know what work he's doing. I would want to know outside of just it's not happened. Like I'd actually want like, are you processing, like, do you know your triggers? Who are you talking to about this? Not just when it gets hard, like who's the prep? Like what do they talk about? Like an affair, there's 10,000 steps to an affair or something like that. Usually that's true for all addiction cycles too. Like, do you know what step 10 is before you actually fall off the cliff? Like the more information and awareness they're building would make me feel safer to see that. And then I'd want their cycle to be decreasing. So if they're the same number of slip up, I don't think you have to break up, but I would definitely not go further.
Move forward into marriage.
Yes. I wouldn't do engagement. I would just be like, no problem. And then a lot of times, I can feel the Holy Spirit. So strong. I think sometimes the men can feel like the verbiage of like, I feel punished because you're not willing to do this with that. It's like, oh, it's not punishment. I just want to, with wisdom, know what I'm saying yes to.
Sure.
And right now it's a hope of a promise that you will be different, but I need to see actual evidence or fruit in your life before
it's a boundary.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because again, words to actions is a huge gap to people. So I would say that. And then the beautiful part, like, even though it's so sad, you get to choose. Like I know so many women who didn't have this conversation before marriage and got sideswiped a decade in. Like you can actually powerfully choose. And there are some women who can be like, I can actually untangle it from my worth. And it's happening about once every 6 months. the rest of you, I want to sign up for. I'm gonna ride this journey out with you. And I'm like, no problem. If someone gets crumbled, like, and there's different factors. Like, I've sat with women who have abuse in their past or whatever your factor is, and if they're crumbled and they're like, I need you to never do this again, or we will not be okay. I'm like, don't get married until there's no point, because you've said it, like, you won't be okay. And the addict's journey out is rarely never again.
Totally.
So you're saying that you know that you probably can't go on that journey with him. No problem. But
so that's more of a matter of knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what can you handle? What are you willing to not just handle, but what are you willing to walk through with this person?
100%.
Yeah. And everybody's threshold is different.
Oh, it's so different.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people take promises and like, he said he never would do it again. I'm like, oh no, I would want to see effort. I'd want to see habits. I'd want to see consistency. I'd want to see fruit, not just promises.
How do you extend compassion while also not ignoring boundaries? Like, where is that line as the partner in the situation? Like,
Totally.
What do you do there?
It's so real. Well, I think honestly, I usually, again, going through and processing with my heart, if there's a slip up,
Sure.
the grief, I can't get to compassion. I can't bypass that and get to compassion. Okay. So then there's this awareness like of this is killing them. Like sin always leads to death. So I'm getting the splashback from their choices, but it is wreaking havoc on their inner world. So like, and then two, what I don't say, I'm a little nervous to say this, when I'm trying to go after compassion with different things, I think of something that I'm personally struggling to manage myself with. So not to minimize the sexual immorality, but I'm like, I have a sweet tooth that I've been trying to kick forever. Like I had a bag of sour gummies on the way over here that when I got out of my car, I was like wiping off my pants, you know? And I was like, I'm 40. Oh man, I had really hoped I'd be further along than this. So it's not that, but I'm like, where can I relate to trying to grow in this area and doing the work and still not have the results of the person I want to be?
Yeah.
Which helps me. But what it doesn't switch then, specifically with porn, is like, this is not working. It is not okay. Because sometimes we watch men be like, I'm going to do the same thing. Like maybe there's a slip up. Like I'll just keep doing the same thing. That doesn't work for me. I would need to know, okay, you've tried this a bunch. This isn't the solution out. What is it? Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. Yeah. So I would be like, I can have compassion because this is like actually producing tons of bad fruit in your life.
Yeah.
But also require a different behavior. It's like a heart posture versus like instill you need to be like my kiddo potty training. Like it's still not okay if he pees on the floor, even though I'm like, I know you're trying, buddy, but you have to learn to pee on the on the toilet.
That is so funny. That is
the
so
weird
real.
analogy, I know.
Yeah.
But it's so true. Like I think like compassion's a heart posture and boundaries are still required. I also too would be like, sometimes with spouses, they'll say like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I think the females sometimes are like, that's what his plan was. If you would like to have something else, you can throw something else on the table. Like there's almost one end of the spectrum, which is control. And it's like, put this on your phone, do this, blah, blah, blah. If you're prescribing solutions to someone, that's external management that might work for a bit. And whether or not it's control, I actually don't care. It's just not as long-term effective for an inside transformation of what's under the surface.
Sure.
It's external. But when they prescribe like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. Awesome. But if there's also something else, sometimes women won't be like, I would really love, like it always happens at night. I just wish he'd plug his phone in downstairs, like in the kitchen. That feels like low hanging fruit. And I'm like, oh, well, did you ask him to? And they're like, no, because he has his plan. And I'm like, oh no, like you could also there is a collaborative effort there that you don't have to, it's not like I give everything to you and you follow my orders, or I don't have a part or opinions in it.
Yeah. You talked about, okay, if this is a cycle and it's happening and I'm not seeing much improvement, for sure don't move forward.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe you're just dating and it's like, okay, well, we're not getting engaged while this is actively a cycle that you're a part of. Or maybe you're engaged, but you're like, well, we're not getting married until this is actively, you know, all this stuff. But when would you say it's time to call it? When would you say that, you know what, this is not getting any better?
One, deception.
Okay.
When they are being not honest and hiding it. That again, like it's two prongs, and that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I can trust your character in other ways to carry this out. And then the other one is I'll watch men sometimes, I'm sure it's like a self-protective, but in their not getting better, they get complacent and they try to minimize what it is.
Okay.
And they'll be like, it's not that big a deal. like I'm actually better than so-and-so. So any of that level of complacency would be a red flag of like, and it's probably after like months of trying to get better. And then it's easier to lower the standard than expect that I could grow.
Yeah.
That would be a red flag to like,
this is going nowhere fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What does the healing process look like for you in that scenario? Not the person who's looking at porn, but for your own self. Like, should you be in counseling? Should you be like, what measures should you be taking to pursue healing from the broken heart that's, caused through all of this?
Yeah. Actually, that's one of the reasons I meet with a lot of the wives after because it's like having a space. I don't think maybe it's bringing up a lot of stuff in you and you want to be in ongoing counseling, but maybe you just need a session where you can just dump out your heart fully and you don't have to think about how it might impact. Because even when you're sharing with someone, you're aware of not just, throwing grenades their way.
Yeah.
So like have a situation where you can, whether it's a mentor or you get a counselor or a coach, where you're actually able to just spill it all out and then define like what your heart feels and then what you maybe need. Like, hey, I'm realizing like the not knowing in a timely fashion is not working and is actually building distrust. So I think we need a quicker cycle, or we need to emphasize that importance or something like that.
Sure.
So it's almost like you dump your purse out and have someone be like, okay, these are the things I'm reflecting that I heard. You're like, yep, those are important. Okay, this is what I'm going to take back to him. And then also knowing it'll take time, expecting. I think there's a difference. Sometimes I think forgiveness, people wrongly mistake forgiveness for being earned a bit versus like it is something you give. What it doesn't mean is that you blindly trust.
Yeah.
But I would say sometimes I watch people be like, earn my trust. And it's almost this like fortress of like something you're guarding versus like, hey, it's free. If you do the work and I see you doing the work, I will extend it. Yes. And I will like push it across the table versus I watch wives who their husband has been porn free for 4 years and they're still
holding it.
Yeah. Being like, you haven't earned my trust. And the husbands are literally like, what do I do? And usually if you can't articulate what would be helpful, it's a you thing where you're like, oh, there's something in me that I don't want to give my trust. And then I wouldn't feel judgment. Whenever I notice things like that, it's easy to be like, ooh, gross, or disdain pop up for yourself, but getting curious and be like, why? Oh, I actually feel like he needs to come and get it. Or it's more of a me, like getting curious about what that, like I'm hoarding my trust and unwilling to, but I can't even articulate it. So I would say that would be flags to like do some work inward.
How do you identify the right person to talk to outside of your relationship
that's
about
good.
this?
Pick someone who kind of generally, they're not anti your spouse, your person. So someone who already has like a negative bent, not going to be your best ear for this. And then also someone who you think gives good advice, not like slanted. I always tease, I have a couple friends and one of my friends, Michelle, is awesome, but she is the one that on my birthday, when she was wishing me happy birthday, we were on speakerphone and she was like, Erin, you have the best wife. And what did she say? She was like, oh, but if you ever hurt her, I will kill you. And then she started threatening him and I'm like, whoa, that got dark for the birthday wish. Okay. But she's not the one I call when my marriage is in pain because I know she's my yes girl.
Sure.
And I love that in certain
she's
aspects.
The one who would kill your husband.
Yes. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Michelle, I'm sure you wouldn't. She's the nicest. But the flip side is Holly, my other friend, is like, I'll tell her like, and this is so hard right now. And she's like, it sounds like you changed the dynamics of your expectations and you didn't actually ever articulate it. So
that sounds
the
like
rules
Holly.
Changed. Yeah.
Holly has read my mail a time or two.
1,000%. She's like, so the rules changed, but you're mad at him for not being able to read your mind. And I'm like, so Holly's the one I call.
Yeah.
Because you want that person that is going to be a mirror, not your commiserate or collaborate. And not just because it's not doing you any favors. Like it could add to this narrative that's unhelpful and actually not getting to a process. Like you want someone who's going to reflect back in a helpful way. Like, it sounds like, so that'd be one thing. And then the other thing I would say is kind of busting this idea of protecting your spouse, your person is not talking about it at all. Maybe you're not talking to everybody because there's wisdom in who you choose, but do not talk to someone and don't, whether it's a true idea or a martyr mindset, don't say I can't. Be like, you can actually make a powerful choice for your half of the mess that you need help for, even if they'd rather it be kept quiet, no problem. But I would say telling them, hey, I'm going to talk to so-and-so this week. Giving them a heads up. It's kind because maybe they see them at a party later and like, oh my gosh, I didn't know they knew versus like, they knew. And then, but then the flip side is maybe they'll say like, I don't want you to tell anyone. If you loved me, you wouldn't. Or if you were protecting my, whatever the verbiage.
Red flag.
Yes. Red flag. And I get that it's hard. I'm going to talk to Sarah this week about it. I need someone. Just like you need your process. This is my process.
Yeah.
So I think probably not confusing what's yours and theirs. Like that's your process. So
totally.
you don't get to be told that you can't manage it.
So when it comes to rebuilding trust, what does that look like on the day-to-day basis? Like how do you, okay, trust is shattered.
Yeah.
What does it look like to start rebuilding that?
Gosh, that's so real. I would say behavior edits of like actually trying things. So whether it's like the phone goes to sleep, like some real practical behavior things that I see you trying, even if it's on an instant road up, it would be, again, the confessions quickly and honestly builds trust. Like even like, I wish it wasn't happening, but I can trust that I'm not going to be blindsided because I've been lied to for 6 months. Like that is harder. The other thing I would say would be to when you express, like sometimes like if after like he'd confess something, I remember being like, fear. It's this odd marriage of like what's building trust and what's me partnering with fear and worry. So there'd be times that I'm like, I'm afraid if I go on this errand tonight that he's going to look at porn and whatever. So instead of actually keeping it inward or enthroning it as I have to stay here or he will look at porn, I would vocalize it. Be like, I'm realizing I need to run to Target to get some things for tomorrow, but this like the thought popped in my mind, like, is this what he's going to do it? And I was like, and I just feel sad that I have this fear to run certain errands because of the behavior choices you made. Again, not punishing, but it's like the waves
vocalizing
of grief. Waves of like, that feels sad. Like, can you talk me through this? And like getting them to like sit with that fear. Cause again, that's like almost like 3 weeks later, a consequence from their choice and broken trust,
So taking it back into a marriage context now, what is it like to rebuild trust in your intimate life? When this feels like such a violation of trust in that exact area. So
true and so real. Again, I would not be prescriptive and say, like no timelines or exact things. I think oftentimes there can be a hard place with intimacy even without the porn problem.
Sure.
So then it gets confuddled or almost like if the woman wants it less, so there's a weird dynamic where she feels like whatever mindset one of them struggling with, porn almost amplifies something that's already there.
It's just another reason to withhold.
So it's hard because it's not new. Like, I don't know everybody's marriage, but the idea of like actually being honest with yourself of like, is this a reason to lean into something I was already having a hard time with, or is this like unique to it? And then vocalizing it, like whether like, hey, I feel sad because I'm like, if maybe that's not it. Like maybe you had a pretty normal, good sex life before. And then you're thinking about like, oh, it's sad. Like, is he gonna, cause a lot of times women will be like, is he thinking of the thing that he looked at or whatever, vocalizing it. That would be another example of like waves of grief. And again, looping would be getting stuck and talking about it, but then doing it solo or burying your heart would be to like just shove it so that it doesn't ruin the moment or whatever. Be like, I just feel sad because I know we're probably gonna, today's our night that we're probably gonna have sex, but feeling some fear about like your slip up, like, is that gonna impact what you're thinking? Like all that would just be honest without punishing or ruminating,
I mean, it really sounds like the antidote to everything is honesty. Honesty from their end, honesty from your end. It's like, okay, let's just be honest and put it all on the table.
I would say honest without blaming. Sometimes people assign accusation to their feelings. So maybe honesty about your emotion or the impact. And not about like, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to have sex with you because you're a slime bag or something. You're like, but you laugh. But sometimes we've been in those meetings and you're like, okay, that's not what I would prescribe, honest, like helpful. So like vulnerability about your emotions without accusation or blame, like a softness, honestly, like a gentle tenderness where it's like inside your heart.
I statements. This is how I feel. This is I am scared about this. I feel this way about this situation. I don't know how to move forward.
And even though like the interesting part is sometimes we think anger will get people to take it seriously, but like really contrite gentleness is sometimes like the most like, I feel so like I want to connect with you sexually, but I feel so afraid of like what's going to pop in your mind. Like that tone is like giving you my heart in a way that you want to take care of it and you want to be that man. Versus this anger, which actually usually disconnects and like
that punishes,
self-protects.
Well, I mean, there's a reason scripture says it's the kindness of God that leads to repentance. And
I'm not saying that anger isn't meant to be felt, but it rarely gets the care your heart actually needs.
It's a part of the
secondary.
It's a part of the grief process. But we can't live there.
Yeah.
What do you think the church gets wrong about the conversation around porn, and specifically in the context of relationships?
Just quit doing it. They're like, just stop. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is an emotional need. This is a physical need, unawareness. This is like, it being illiterate to like what's happening inside of you. Like, or even like, okay, great. You're actually, again, sexualizing your needs. So this idea of, it's wrong, just stop it. Like almost like if you know how wrong it is, that'll make you stop the behavior versus like it's a solution to something. I love behavior science books. And this one time, I think it was The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And they like quoted a research that did brain scans on recovering addicts. And it was a slew of like alcoholism and then drug addicts. And what they said is the addicts that recovered successfully did not erase that pattern in their brain. They actually just carved a new one to get the need met.
Wow.
So the idea of just stop it is actually unhelpful. Like how God made our wired our brains. It's like, you probably don't actually know how to rest well. And you get to burn out all the time. So you resting and Sabbathing and whatever that looks like, and you understanding a healthy relationship with your work-life balance might be actually what quits your need for a solution,
because you're now getting this need met in a healthy way.
Yeah. Or you don't get pushed to your limit so much that you're making a frantic grab for some dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin release,
Totally.
So I'd say like replacing it and actually having a plan for knowing what drives you there versus, it's sexual immorality, just stop.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Jenna, my last question for you would be this. If you were sitting across from the you that Aaron had confessed to 6 months into dating for the first time, what would you tell that you now?
I would wish, which is what I tell all the women we sit with, is like, this is not a you thing. I wish I could skip that step. That was the most wasted energy, almost like unhelpful, insecure, like just bred insecurity in a way that like this is a him needing to learn his own emotional needs and other ways of coping that are helpful and healthy.
Yeah.
This is not you being less. This is not being you too chubby. This is not you being a brunette instead of a blonde. Like, do not make this a you thing. And you can have compassion and be heartbroken and still hold boundaries.
Yeah. That's so good.
Oh.
That's so good. Thank you. Thank you for coming and having this conversation. I wonder, would you just pray for our audience? Like, I know that there are people listening who are like, I clicked on this because this is the exact problem I'm walking through right now.
Yeah.
And so I would just love for you to just pray for us and just kind of, I don't know, release what you have to release over us.
Yeah. Oh, Holy Spirit, I thank you. As before we pray, I just felt like the Lord wanted you to know that you're not alone in it, that there's some level of isolation that is the enemy's tactic to make you feel overwhelmed by the size of it, or feel like you have to keep it quiet, but like sin breeds in the dark. And we just release you to actually see the freedom of, this is like a generational attack against relationships and purity, that this is not unique to you, therefore you can overcome it. This is a systematic attack that we can stand up and say no to. So Holy Spirit, we just release the insight to see that this is something that can be overcome. And we pray for those of you who are finding the news out, whether it's been recent or a while, or you're living in this pattern, or you know, whatever you are in the journey, we just pray that you would feel, there's so many promises about the Lord being close to those who are brokenhearted. And I think you getting the care you need from a dad who has all the compassion and understands exactly the nuances that your heart is experiencing, that you would sit there and that you would almost like take his word, like cash in his promise, that he would feel his comfort and that he would mourn with you, and that you're not alone in it and you're not making too big of a deal out of it. And all of it makes sense. And also that there's hope, that there is hope and grace and strength to walk through this to the other side. That this does not have to break you or your spirit or be like a permanent scar that you carry. There's healing and freedom in this. So we just pray that the Lord would bring people to your mind, if you haven't shared about it, to get honest, feel connection and compassion and comfort from someone physically next to you, and that there would be wisdom and insights in any part of it that feels like you're ruminating or looping and getting stuck, and you know that they did something, but you realize how much it's almost like become cancer for you. We just break that in the name of Jesus. And we pray that you would become aware of your looping thoughts and actually break them up with truth. So whether you remember that there's always hope, maybe it's just as simple as reminding yourself there's always hope because Jesus came and he conquered everything. So there's hope for this situation, or whatever you need to remind yourself that those looping thoughts would not poison and spoil your mind or steal any energy from you. We speak freedom in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jenna. Thanks for being here. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. And we will see you on the next one. Until next time. We know this podcast isn't just a show. It's a conversation that's changing lives. If anything you've heard here or in one of our courses, videos, or resources has helped you break free from sexual sin, date more intentionally, or build stronger, healthier, more godly relationships, would you let us know? Drop a comment, send us a message. We would love to hear your testimony. And when you share it, it not only encourages us, but it might just help someone else realize that they're not alone. Thanks for being part of this movement.